conversations on hot topics with people who don't share your same beliefs. Your host, Katrina Esau, Sabrina Protic, Ricky Burney, and Walter Parker. Now let's get ready to have that conversation. Uncomfortable Conversations is powered by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship on Facebook.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Uncomfortable Conversations. I'm Sabrina Protic in Tampa, Florida, enjoying a little warmer weather than the rest of the country. What about you, Ricky?
Same here. It's good to have that warm weather again, that true Florida weather that we're used to.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm sorry. I living up north in the snow. I was talking to a friend of mine. He was shoveling snow. I was cleaning the leaves out of my pool. So there you go. Totally different perspectives. So as I said, I'm Sabrina Protic. I'm author of the book, Growing Ageless, Think Young and Live Younger. My co-host here is Ricky Burney. He's a success coach and author of the book, Destined for Greatness, 90 Days to Transformational Affirmation, right here in Tampa Bay, Florida with us. So Ricky, how's your 2021 going so far?
I'll be honest, 2021 has been amazing. And it's because I have truly created a theme for 2021. Instead of doing the resolutions, I've done a theme for the entire year. And my theme for 2021 is peace. So I've taken the necessary steps in order for me to get peace in every aspect of my life. So it's going very well for me.
Nice. I did my dream board yesterday, my vision board, whatever you want to call it. And you know, when you do something like that, similar to you doing your, what that's going to look like, it really helps you to center and see your purpose. So for me, mine was about reconnecting with family and friends and good food, the things that I've been denied, because of the COVID. And I had pictures of my kids and my husband and I going out dancing, and my best friend and I having a drink and going out and having a meal. So for me, mine was just that warm, fuzzy kind of thing, like what I'd like to see happen before the end of 2021 is to get back to that good, warm feeling. And also a little business. I had my financial coaching business out there, and also I've got a new thing going on with anti-aging because women love to look young. So I got a little something going on there. So you guys see it. It's called the Sharper Woman. So she'll be making her way. But those are my feel-good things. So that's kind of what my picture looked like. Now we're gonna go to something a little heavier, right, Ricky?
Right.
We're getting ready to get heavy. So our purpose each week, as you well know, Ricky, is to encourage and equip and empower our listeners to take the proper steps each week and to prepare ourselves for uncomfortable conversation with people on issues that matter the most. They're the conversations that we often put off to the last minute. We get a little nervous, we get a little scared. Should we not? And we almost anticipate the dread. And we've all been there like, I got to have this conversation. So shying away from those uncomfortable conversations may appear to be the easy option, just don't have it. But experience shows that avoidance doesn't work. So Ricky, you want to lean in a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Sabrina. Honestly, avoiding the conversation, we miss the opportunity to deepen and strengthen the relationships with people. And even though it sounds counterintuitive, having the real conversations with people is the heart of real relationships. Think about it. It's easy to make assumptions about a person's intent, particularly in a relationship with the person that is challenging. We can wrongly develop a negative intent, which impacts how we react to their opinions and ideas. By having that uncomfortable conversation, being clear with the other person, the value, the place on the relationship, we understand exactly where they're coming from. And it just gives us not only a better understanding, but it also allows us to navigate the ups and downs of what relationships really come with. Everything's not always going to be great. Everything's not always going to be roses. Sometimes you're going to have those valleys. So we have to know how to navigate that by knowing how to have the conversation with the other individual.
Awesome. Yeah. I kind of feel that same way, because things can get a little intense, especially when it's somebody that we care about, right? When it's someone that really matters in our lives.
Absolutely.
So, we're going to be talking more about this whole thing of uncomfortable conversation. I really agree with you on that, Ricky. And of course, there are different types of uncomfortable conversations that need to be had. We have to carefully, gently sometimes go into a conversation. We're more likely to fail if we just bam. If you just don't really give thought to what you're going to say and just go into it, then that's probably not going to be good. So we need to have that conversation with certain principles in mind. We must enter the conversation with good intent, genuine interest to listen. Sometimes we're more concerned with what we're going to say than listening to the person and then responding. Sometimes we check out when somebody's talking because we already, I got to get my thought in. Let's right? I'm guilty. So there are certain principles that we have to put in place, and we must strive to ensure that each person knows the value of the relationship, whether it's a workmate, inside your home, a family member, a friend, that we value them. We must not abandon these principles that we hold true about the other person's intent also. So we don't want to jump to any conclusions. We don't want to assign anything to them. We don't even want to think how we think they think. Sometimes I know he's going to think this way, or dude, we actually even stated in conversation, we might say, I know you feel this way. Well, that's not the principle of uncomfortable conversation, to state a person's feelings for them. And I know when somebody does that to me, I kind of get upset when they tell me, you gonna tell me how I feel? You gonna tell me my perspective? That's when the gloves come off.
Right.
So so we're gonna bring a topic today, and we don't want the gloves to come off. And this is on white rage in America. We want to have a dignified conversation with those principles in place. We see this all around us. Instead of having conversation, we see debates. And they can get heated because what's happening? I'm thinking about my point of view. I'm not even listening to yours. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to trump what you just said. And so we know that nobody ever wins a debate. Nobody ever wins an argument. You've heard that before.
Right. Yes.
Well, we brought in a panel of experts today, Ricky, to help us kind of unpack and dissect this. We have Bernie Mock, Strategic Accounts Manager and co-founder of Forever Guard. He's an ambassador at M3 Link, and he's also the COO at Moza Digital LLC. Bernie's a phenomenal person. We're going to hear more from him. We also have David Hart. He's the CEO of M3 Link of Florida. And we also have Julian Keys. He's a CEO of Sauce by NO and Lessons by NO. So this is going to be a great, great panel. We're going to welcome these uncomfortable conversations. Each of you can share with us in your passions, purpose, and vision for 2021. We invite you to the show to have a non-religious and non-political conversation with us on this topic of white rage in America. Carol Anderson, PhD, wrote an article in the New York Times as a bestseller on this topic called "The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide," and shared her perspectives on the root issues with the challenges that we see today from all areas and angles. Our goal is to listen, learn, and reflect on our guests' perspectives without bias, judgment, and the key word, debate. Ricky, what are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to share an article that's going to speak directly to this topic of white rage. And this article states, Andrew L. Yarrow wrote an article in the Coalition of Human Needs on January 12, 2016, titled, "What's Happening to White Men? 10 Numbers that Explain the Roots of White Male Rage." And it stated, amid all the largely disconnected discussions about angry white males, stagnant wages, and inequality, fatherless families, and polarized politics, several striking linkages among these issues have largely gone unnoticed. Tens of millions of white men have been expelled or checked out from mainstream American life, a reality with profound consequences for our economy, our children and families, our civic life, and our politics. At least 20% of the nation's 90 million white men have been pushed to the sidelines, either retreating or storming out of the mainstream of American life. They're not the men you see at work who play with their children, go out with their wives or partners, are involved in their communities, and earn a living to save for their children's education and their own retirement. What they do does not register in either the gross domestic product or in the glimmer of a child's eye. Many of them are mad as hell, and they have good reason to be angry, although their venom all too often is turned on scapegoats: the women, immigrants, government, African Americans, and Latinos. Extremist non-mainstream candidates have tapped these walls of anger, but most analysis stick to economics and politics, failing to see the many factors buffering a sizable chunk of white male America. We know that they are out there, but they do not fit old stereotypes of failure. So we are having trouble coming to grips with who they are or naming the problem. Parts of their stories have garnered significant attention, but we do not see that what have been treated as separate problems are closely related. To paraphrase Bob Dylan, something is happening, but we don't know what it is. And today we are going to unpack what that is. We're going to take a quick sponsor break, and when we come back, we will have our distinguished panel and speak about white rage in America.
Uncomfortable Conversations Talk Radio is sponsored by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship. You can follow all our hosts on Facebook. Search Trendsetter Mentor Group and join. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations, where we're going to be talking about a topic on white rage in America, and we're going to be hearing from our guests, Mr. Julian Keys, Mr. David Hart, and Mr. Bernie J. Mock. They're going to help us kind of dissect these things that are growing concerns in our communities and our countries. Let's start off with the elephant in the room. From your perspectives, what is your personal definition or understanding of white rage? And do you agree or disagree with the article viewpoint that was just read, especially after the events that are occurring in our nation's capital? And remember, this is not a political question. We just need some social awareness. So we're going to start off getting a perspective here from Mr. David Hart.
Thank you, Sabrina. Good morning, everyone. I think in my opinion, folks are always slow to accept change. And there's been, as things change, people resist what's going on. Technology has done a lot of change. The creation of or the rise of social media has brought a lot of voices to the forefront that would have never been heard in prior things, and that many folks struggle with change, and there are both sides that there are folks that are angry over the status quo, and there are folks that are angry with the change that is appearing. I think everyone is just overwhelmed with the amount of information and sensationalism of everything, so that everyone is stressed out, especially in the times of COVID where people are struggling just to put food on the table. It's just, people are struggling. So they're all stressed out, and they may overreact or react more intensely than they would have if they weren't so stressed about, being the security of a job or being able to make the rent payments and things like that.
Perfect. David, what an interesting perspective. And I would not have thought that technology contributed to that, but I'm going to agree because we get news we get live now. It used to be you'd have to pick up a newspaper, right? And
it's in your face 24/7.
That's powerful. Thank you so much for that perspective. Let's hear from our youngest member, Julian Keys.
Once again, thank you all for having me. And great question, and I'm loving the conversation so far. Once again, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. I can only give my opinion as non-biased or apolitical as it may be. But it is from a young African-American man. But in regards to my perspective with the definition of white rage, I would personally think it's consistent with my thoughts on it personally. So I didn't really read anything too new. That's how I kind of view white rage. In regards to the numbers and the statistics that were provided, I would say from a human perspective, it's natural to feel that way. Anyone would feel that way in regards to feeling excluded from society, feeling like, especially from a white male perspective, if you've been led to believe a certain position or perspective for so long, and as you all stated, when change starts to come and the dynamic shifts, it's hard to adjust. And I think for any person, you feel the same way. I think the issue is in what comes down to the particular topic of what we're talking about, white rage, is America has always had a history. And this is not an opinion. This is factual. We can bring out statistics and facts throughout America's history, short history, that has always been a go-to solution when things counter the perspective we try to establish, right? So with white rage, I think that's a great, I guess, a definition, I would say, in regards to those two sides of it's natural to feel that way, but when the scapegoating comes into play, where it's like it's this fault, that fault, this and that too, and then since as of right now, the white race in general, the European descendant race is still the majority in America. So once you feel that way, you still have the capacity and the power to like provoke, your will or invoke your will within the systematic construct of America. So that's why you see all of this tension and this this tension within our society now, because it is that reality that things are shifting. But once again, there's a lot of members of the white race that are still in charge of the social construct. So yeah, I think there's fight back from that, and I would consider that white rage.
Wow, Julian. Ooh, I tell you, this is why we need this panel of diversity. Now, Julian came at this from a whole different angle, and he was careful to pick his words. But Julian, and I'm just going to say what I think you said is that the white culture is still the dominant culture. They're still the white race. Mm-hmm. They're still the dominant. So by sheer numbers, the white race has an opportunity to still make the vote count, so to speak, make the change. So
you see that. I mean, if we talk about from an economic standpoint, communication standpoint, I read an article. Not an article. I was actually reading a book. I forgot what it was, but it's like if 90+% of media is controlled by the white race, if a certain amount, the majority percentage of from economic standpoint or whatever the case may be, like in all these industries, if it's that, and then you can have a call to action with the people where they identify with, if you have, and not to make it political, but if you have politicians or people of influence saying, hey, you're being purged and this and that too, it's like, people are going to naturally do what they can do. It's the survival mode. You're going to maintain the status quo, you know? So, and then, like I said, it's not like a malicious thing, but if that's what you've always believed and that's what you've always known, you're going to protect that status quo. So yes, that's exactly what I mean. You're still in a position to do something about it, you know? And that's why we see this friction now. And there's such fight back from both sides. I'm fighting for position, and then people were like, we're fighting for change, you know? And
Julian, that's phenomenal. We're going to hear from Bernie, and then we'll get Ricky, because I see it in Ricky's eyes. Ricky's got to weigh in. So let's hear from Bernie J. Mock. Let's get his perspective on this.
So I grew up, I'm probably the oldest person here, and I am really the oldest white guy here. I grew up in Largo, Florida in the 50s when, honestly, I didn't know any other people of different color. I grew up that way until I became a musician at a very young age. All of a sudden, I was working with Stevie Wonder, Jimi Hendrix, quite a few different nationalities in the Hispanic community. And I got to realizing that music was the international language to bring people together. And I don't have rage. I don't live with rage. I would say this to everyone. I think the whole problem right now is communication. I think because of the training I've had over my career, there are 3 C's that I live by. The first thing is to connect with another person, and then to check, to convey your simple message. What is it? But the thing we're missing right now in America is nobody's checking to see what the other person is trying to say. In training with Stephen Covey, I learned about layer principles. Listen to the person. Acknowledge what they're saying. Say things back to them like, I see what you're saying. I understand you. And then explore. Tell me more about what you're trying to get your point across to me. And then respond to that person. But unfortunately, most of us in society listen and respond. There's no acknowledgement. There's no exploration. So we're not really communicating. And Sabrina, because of this issue that we're talking about today, I don't live with rage. I don't want to be around rage. And I understand that it's happening, but Dave Hart said it the best. It's a process of change. And in change, there's 2 pains we live with: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And a lot of us right now are frustrated. Dave hit it right on the head with the point about people are suffering with the pandemic. They're struggling. There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of people that aren't communicating. So that, Sabrina, would be the point that I would try to bring into this conversation is I think we all need to think about how we communicate with our fellow man.
Bernie Mock, thank you for putting the icing on the cake and identifying some of the underlying reasons for this rage that we see. I think that's critical communication. Like David Hart mentioned, we got this bam right in your face, but are people being respectfully listened to, and the methods of proper communication and documentation of thoughts and facts? Ricky, real briefly, what are your thoughts on it? Then we want to ask them another question.
Well, I guess I want to kind of just bring it all in together, because I think every single person brought something to the table as to how this even occurs. David spoke about how technology and having that completely in your face all the time, how that can impact a person. And what I feel from what I got from Julian is what I heard was a loss of perceived power. You know, you have been indoctrinated to believe that you are in a position of power, and you have this perception now that you may be losing that because of what's going on with the pandemic, because you can't pay your bills anymore, because you feel like your voice is being silenced. And also the communication aspect, as Bernie Mock spoke about. People are not communicating, but part of the reason they're not communicating is because they are already on the defense, because they feel as if they have lost their perceived power. So all of those working together creates the frustration that leads to the anger that we are seeing right now. So I think everyone hit the nail on the head, and I think that all collectively, all of that is what we're seeing right now going on in the world right now.
Excellent, excellent summation of it all, Ricky. We want to throw one more question at them in terms of anger. You know, we've had this whole Black Lives Matter, you know, the other perspective of it. What are your thoughts on the fears? What are some of the fears that have been directed to minorities and especially Black men feeling this way, feeling like they have to say Black Lives Matter? Because on one hand, we got the white race, we got the minority race, the Black male, feeling like they're losing their voice, you know, and so they're reacting to their own fear of losing that stage. So, Julian, what are your thoughts on that?
So I would say, in regards to, is it self-inflicted, right? That's what you're asking. As far as for, I'm sorry, you're asking me about are white men anger self-inflicted, right?
I was asking more on the fear aspect of it. So, you know, we've seen the angry white male in America, and we've seen the other perspective of the Black male afraid. That's why the whole Black Lives Matter thing surfaced, I believe. So, you know, to that point, what are your perspectives on that? Again, keeping it non-religious, non-political.
Right. Yeah, I guess my perspective here too, because like I love history. You know, I believe you have to know where you come from to understand your current predicament, and you can kind of make choices to move ahead. And like I said, I think in general, from a fear-based perspective, just in America, we have created a system that's founded on certain principles for every person, right? And every single community within this society struggles with that identification that was originally established for us. So speaking on behalf of a young Black man, you know, we have certain fears because we've always had to be aware of these fears. They're realistic. Same thing from, and I'm not a woman, I can't say that, but you know, as men, we have to be very respectful of women's perspective, because once again, even in society, how we originally established the society, everyone has roles, and those roles are consistently changing. So once again, there's friction now from a young black man. You have certain fears, whether it's like oppression or, you know, I can't go here without someone judging me, this and that too. There's also this ingrained, like I said, insecurity that you have to develop and grow out of, and you have to learn like that's trained to you, because at one point within society, the social dynamic that was beneficial for the social dynamic for Black people to play this role, you know. And then once again, for white males, at one point you had to play this role, or these are the privileges that were awarded, that were afforded to you, you know. And women at a certain point, this was your role. So, like I said, everyone has fears because there's change, and there are some people who have dealt with fear for so long that they're angry. They're really angry, you know. And there's some people too that's now dealing with some fears where it's like, you know, you have some type of push to return things to what some people say normal level. But then to touch back on what Bernie was saying was, I think all of these things, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. It's just how we feel as human beings, and you have to have some means of communication. But once again, the communication has to come from people willing to listen. You have to listen and respect other people's opinions. And once again, the last thing I would say is, and this is not biased, but it's only from my perspective. You know, once again, America. And I say America because I don't want to make this a white male thing. I think a lot of times too, it comes off like you're attacking white males in particular, you know. And that's why a lot of times too, when you speak about these issues and you say white, a lot of white people feel offended because they're like, I personally don't have these beliefs or these feelings in regards to this. I personally wasn't raised like that. I wasn't this, I wasn't that. I think when we say white raised, a lot of times it is a system that was put in place to favor certain people. And in every society throughout history, there has been a hierarchy of importance of people, right? And that goes into a lot of division, where you have the difference between rich and poor, the difference between the skin complexion. Even within the Black community, you have certain things that separate us between how light-skinned you are as a Black person and how dark-skinned you are. The lighter you are, you have more favor. The darker you are, you have less favor. You know, the sexist, ageism. You know, right now I feel like we have a lot of ageism right now, where there's a lot of young people that don't want to listen to older people, and then there's also older people who look at young people a certain way. So, like I said, anyway, going back to this whole thing of white rage, it is a systematic approach that we're talking about. It's not any in particular individual. But like I said, in this society, we have positioned everyone in a certain position to say, this is your role. So now that that's changing, you're having either fear from some side, and then you're having anger from other sides.
Wow, Julian, you went deep on that. We appreciate it. I mean, you see the value of communication and allowing people to have a voice. That's kind of what we're going at here, is just hearing from people. Bernie Mock, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I guess the topic was fear. And there's only two places you live. You either live I live in faith. I don't live in fear. At this point in my life, there's nothing really that phases me. I don't put myself in positions to be in fear. There are places you can go. At times you shouldn't be there. I believe that a lot of people that live in fear are very insecure. They're struggling. I just don't go there. So Sabrina, that, I don't have a whole lot to say in relation to that. I do have a lot of positive influences I keep myself surrounded by, as you know, and that's where I put my energy, my time, and my effort.
Thank you so much, Bernie, for still keeping it on that level of clean, clear-cut communication and positivity. So thank you. Let's hear from David Hart on that matter.
Thank you, Sabrina. One thing I would say is that as the communication changes or the focus changes, I feel that we have a risk of everyone being less tolerant, because the way the hypersensitivity to everything is that if one person feels offended by something or not, if everyone doesn't jump on board to support them, the folks that don't jump on board are the next target for whatever it may be. And I think we're forgetting to allow people to have individual opinions. I think we could always do a better job of just treating everyone like human beings. And that starts by, we need to really start boiling down and eliminating, or stop putting everyone into classifications and say, hey, we're all Americans, let's say, and let's all work together as Americans, versus he or she or black or white, or the levels within different races and things like that. I mean, coming together and working together and respecting everyone's opinion is where we need to be focusing on, versus either, if you're not with the current voice of the day or the current opinion of the day, you're ostracized and put in a corner. So that's where I'm at.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We have different perspectives on that. Ricky, do you have any thoughts on that?
The only perspective I really have on that is I do believe that they hit the nail on the head as far as the main thing that's the issue here, and it's the respect. Yes, we must respect all perspectives, because a person believes what they believe for a specific reason. But I also believe that on top of that, we have to learn to respect people as well. And sometimes we interpret a challenge to our perspective as disrespect. And sometimes it's not necessarily to disrespect you, but it's to open your mind to a different way of perceiving the world and how other people might be affected. So I think that's also something that we must learn to do, is learn how to allow others to possibly allow us to see an alternative without taking it as a direct attack on our own character and our morals and integrity.
Hear this. I love all the perspectives. Thank you so much, Ricky. We really needed to hear this. We're going to go to break and we're going to see an interesting study. And when we come back, Ricky will help us dissect that.
Today's audience was separated into two groups. Not on the color of their skin were they separated when they arrived. They were separated based on the color of their eyes. But they have no idea that they were separated. What we did was treat each group differently, discriminating against the people who have blue eyes, catering to those people with brown eyes.
Come on. What color are your eyes? Blue? Over there. Put it on. No. Over there. Blue? Over there.
The blue-eyed people were pulled out of line, told to put on a green collar and wait outside. When the brown-eyed people arrived, they were told to step to the front of the line. Audience members with brown eyes were allowed to enjoy coffee and donuts. The blue-eyed group became upset when they saw the brown-eyed people were being seated first.
What are they doing in there?
Diversity expert Jane Elliott helped set up the experiment.
I've been a teacher for 25 years in the public, private, and parochial schools in this country, and I have seen what brown-eyed people have done as compared to what blue-eyed people do. And it's perfectly obvious. And if I didn't believe it before this morning, you should have been here this morning when we brought these people in here.
Feeling discriminated against, the blue-eyed audience members were visibly upset.
She was rude to us, all of us. Yelled at us, called us names, pushed us aside. She was rude.
Just want to say, why doesn't Jane have a green collar on? She's got blue eyes.
Because I've learned to act brown-eyed. I have a brown-eyed husband and 3 brown-eyed children.
Why did you?
And the message in this room is act brown-eyed and you too can take off your collar. Act intelligently and you too won't need your collar. None of you have acted intelligently yet.
It wasn't long before the brown-eyed people bought into the idea that they were superior.
You people, look, it is... People, I had a girlfriend in school who was blue-eyed. She was so stupid. She was always copying off of my papers. These people were so rude and so noisy today, we couldn't hear ourselves even talk. It was ridiculous.
Eventually, the audience figured out the show was really about race. Now, he was so angry, he took off his collar way on early.
How many of you people of color can take off the collar that we have put on you? How many of you can take off your color? But if a black male refused to follow your orders or your husband's orders or your father's orders on the street, you would not see that as being highly principled. You would see him as being an uppity nigger.
Well, we can see where this is going. She's saying that everybody has racism in them. It's not really about the eye. She's trying to teach about racism. But she can't get away from the fact that God created the races and you are going to be different. You can't help it.
God
to be like that.
One race, the human race, and human beings created racism.
We caught up with the mastermind behind the eye color test. Jane Elliott is her name, 22 years later.
I loved teaching. I started the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise because Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month in February in my 3rd grade classroom, and he was dead at the hands of an assassin. I hate to talk about this because every time I talk about it, I remember how it felt that day. I was going to have to go into my classroom and explain to my students why the adults in this country had allowed somebody to kill hope, because Martin Luther King, for me, was hope for this country. I decided that the next day I was going to do what Hitler did. I was going to pick out a group of people on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they had no control, separate them according to the color of their eyes, treat one group badly and treat the other group very well, and see what would happen. Eye color and skin color are caused by the same chemical, melanin. There is no logic in judging people by the amount of a chemical in their skin. Pigmentation should have nothing to do with how you treat another person, but unfortunately it does. Give me a child at the age of 8, let me do that exercise, and that child is changed forever.
Selma 50 Month begins Thursday, January 1st with a special edition of Where Are They Now? At just 6 years old, a powerful symbol for the civil rights movement, Oprah and Ruby Bridges. Then, O.J. Simpson prosecutor Christopher Darden.
I was devastated and decimated by the trial.
If you don't have a lot of time to shop for a gift for that special person in your life, we can help. Today, gift guru Sandra Magsalmon will show us a few creative gifts when time is of the essence.
Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations, and we just got the opportunity to watch the 50-year-old experiment done by diversity expert Jane Elliott for the Oprah Winfrey audience. And this experiment still works to this day. It just personifies what happens on a regular basis. And for anyone who is interested, the full segment is online, so definitely look it up. It's about 35 minutes. I watched it earlier, and it's just mind-blowing because we only saw a portion of what the audience experienced, but there's a full-on experience as far as having them have certain conditions where the brown-eyed people were treated better. They were given coffee and donuts, and the blue-eyed people had to sit out in the cold, and they also had to wait 2 hours more than the brown-eyed people. And just to see the different reactions, and as she started to explain to them what she was demonstrating, and sometimes the resistance that people feel, and just the resistance of the perspective that people have been indoctrinated to believe about what it means to be human and what it means to be able to navigate the world. So if you really want to get the true feel of what the experiment did, I would definitely say to look over that and search for it online. Now, in regards to that, I just want to go to our panel right now and see what your thoughts are on that. When we look at this experiment, how does this apply to the problem that we see today among white and Black men? And for that question, let's start it off with our young, distinguished panelist, Julian Keys.
Well, I think that was a great experiment. It kind of showed basically our human feat of how we'll all basically react to that particular situation if we are particularly categorized or, you know, we're treated differently. And I think it also showed too why, once again, going back to what Bernie said, what's been like the main topic this morning is, you know, understanding and communication. And I think another great human quality is empathy for people. You know, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes as opposed to judging, or even like from the communication standpoint, you're trying to listen to respond. You're listening to understand, and you're not judging people to say, hey, this is malicious or anything like that too. But realistically, we can all be sucked into that. So like you had in this experiment where you had the blue-eyed people, you know, they're feeling, you know, oppressed, and well, you know, I'm treated unfavorably and this and that too. And then you had the brown people who started to believe this. They were just like, you know, they start feeling superior. They start buying into this notion as opposed, like, you know, we feel good. So yeah, you know what? Yeah, I mean, we have brown and then this, and then you start going into these things that aren't necessarily making sense. It's like, yeah, well, she has blue eyes, he has blue eyes, and you know, they were always stupid in this. And I feel like that's how we've been as society. You know what I mean? And some of that goes into too, like this thing of you know, insecurity, like human insecurity is very natural, but you know, we look for things sometimes subconsciously to make us feel better about ourselves, but that's a thin line because it crosses over into how can I make myself feel superior than another person? And if given the correct environment, it can really not fester necessarily, but it can grow into something. And like I said, that becomes reality, where it's like, once again, in this country, we've done things to, I mean, even realistically right now too, with America, and I'm making it political, but America, we're the best country. We're this, God bless America, this and that too. I know it's very patriotic, but also too, like I said, this is a world full of people, just people normal like us. And some of us have different circumstances. So like I said, that experiment really showed how some of us can just easily buy into stuff and how we want to separate ourselves, how we want to categorize ourselves to feel better about ourselves. And that kind of goes into insecurities. But I think ultimately too, that showed that everyone's prone to it. It's not even just a race thing. Through historical context, we've always based things off of race or other things like wealth and whatever the case may be. But that just showed from the smallest level, we find things to differentiate ourselves or separate ourselves to feel better about ourselves. And that's a fine line that we can walk on. It's a fine line we can walk on if we're not careful. That can lead to other consequences.
I love that. And from what I hear, it sounds like a lot of what we are, I guess, told to really believe is that we should be better than people instead of looking at, everyone is different and everyone has their own unique value, and to be able to respect everyone's value. And I think that was something that you really touched on with that. I want to get Bernie's perspective on this, because I know you have a wealth of knowledge as well as a wealth of experience. So what were your takeaways from that video?
So I've got a little bit of a problem with this experiment. My mom had brown eyes. My dad had blue eyes. I have green eyes. So I didn't even fit into the experiment. But I did hear a key word from Julian that really struck me, and I had thought about it before he said it, actually, to bring it up today, and that was the word empathy. We all, every nationality, every skin color, every eye color, we all bleed red blood. When it's all said and done, we're human beings. And if we could just take a moment and understand that, that's the universal part of who we all are. And that word that Julian said, when I heard it, it just struck me, because empathy is putting yourself, I grew up hearing putting yourself in the other person's moccasins, because I'm a mock. But anyway, I just believe that communication, taking a moment to listen to the other person and trying to understand what they're trying to say, and not have, and here's a key word for everybody, agenda-itis. Sabrina mentioned it early on today. I've got my agenda. I got to make sure it's out there. Well, it's great to have an agenda, but if that's all you're pushing, the other person isn't going to hear you. That's the other part of communication. So that would be my perspective, and I hope that adds something, but I do have green eyes, so I kind of kept thinking, well, I don't fit into this one. So that would be the issue I would have had with the whole experiment. So that's my opinion.
And thank you for sharing that. And maybe that brings up another point in America as well, that experiment in itself. You had the blue-eyed, you had the brown-eyed, and then you have the green-eyed who feels excluded because they don't fit anywhere in there. Now, what about when you have black and the white, and then you have someone who's biracial who doesn't really know where they fit into the equation? So that could also be a further manifestation of what that really looks like for America. Yeah, David, I want to get your perspective on it as well.
Well, one of the things I'm taking out of the conversation today is that, we probably need to start at an early age with our kids in the schools and at home of really teaching people to accept others, just accept others as is. Of course, our beliefs and values on others, that's not our job. Our job is to enjoy your own life and accept others as they are. And, that built up of hostilities or personal beliefs that we want to try and put on others creates all these stereotypes of green eyes are not as good as blue eyes, which aren't as good as brown eyes, which aren't as good as, I don't know, hazel eyes. And then, and it's really difficult because, the challenge we all have is that we're all running around so fast that we don't take the time to stop and listen. I forget who the author was. I think it's either Dale Carnegie or Stephen Covey. It's, listen before you speak type concept, because, until you understand what the other person's saying, your message is not going to be received. And catering your message to others when they're fully paying attention is important. And, just accept, it's okay to have differences. Just, not everyone has to be identical. And, through diversity of views and races and other things, that's what creates the true value. And, we're able to do so much more with different points of view.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Great perspective, David. And, this experiment in itself, something else that we did not get to really see in that video, but what did happen in that experiment is that the blue-eyed people who felt discriminated against, they became loud, unruly, disruptive as they were waiting while they watched the brown-eyed people get all the perks and everything. So they became disruptive and in a way protested against the behavior that was happening against them. So with this experiment, Jane, she showed how people being discriminated against will equate to rage, ignoring the problem will make it worse. Addressing each of these specific problems with specific solutions, good jobs, wages, education, and public health, and encouraging responsible fatherhood and civic involvement is what will help these men, not to mention the nation and the non-white and female objects that many times are the subject of their anger. Can everyone in here share their perspective on why this video and this message is important to share with your friends and your family about why white and black people are angry at the economic system that was created to divide the wealth from the poor? I'll start off with, we'll start with Bernie this time.
Repeat the question again.
Yes, so just share your perspective on why this experiment is so important for us to share with our family and friends to explain why white and black people are angry at this economic system that was created to divide the wealth from the poor.
So it could be not just white and black, it could be Jewish and, what Hitler did. It could be so many things that are divisive rather than inclusive, rather than getting people to come together. As a musician, I did notice when I was in music, I have been out for a long time now, but people came together with music. It was like a language in itself. I love music, and my youngest daughter is a music teacher. I think our society, Dave Hart hit it, doesn't take the time to slow down enough to even listen. I got to spend a week with Stephen Covey. I learned more in that week. It changed my career and my life, because sometimes without even speaking, you're louder than the words you speak. So I don't personally live, I have a lot of black friends, a lot of them, and I don't see color. That's kind of where I'm from. I just don't notice it. I'm with Dave. I just want my children and my grandchildren now are growing up in homes that really look at people as just who they are, period. I agree with Dave on that point. So it's been a great show today. I've enjoyed hearing all the different perspectives from everybody. And I think it all boiled down to just people listening to each other and trying to get on the same page and try to understand each other. It's pretty much, that's where we are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Julian, can you give your thoughts on that? Why do you think it's important to share this?
Yeah, I think it's important to share just because it gives another faced to a similar situation. It gives a different perspective to it, but it shows like the main central idea, and similar to what Bernie just said too. It's like everything is meant to be so divisive, you know, and to have separate. I feel that's a way to control people, you know. It's the fear factor once again. You want to separate people. It's like the divide and conquer thing, and it goes in multiple ways, but it's important to show people this and to reinforce the information so that we never become content in the status quo. And I think humans, we also have a tendency to do that, where once things are constantly done, we just become content in it. But subconsciously, we're dissatisfied. So that's where sometimes it's like this subconscious anger where, you know, people are really out here upset, you know, and don't know why. They just know, like, yo, it's just not a good dynamic. And it's good to always pin us versus them. So it's like, if you're talking about wealth in America or economics, it's like, you know, the poor versus the rich. And once again, like I said, too, I think if there is a conscious effort to prevent people from, you know, prospering in life and wherever the case may be, like that's a malicious intent. So yeah, I think everyone should be afforded the opportunity. So, you know, I think it's just good. It gives another perspective, and it makes you think about things, and you have to constantly reinforce that and acknowledge that that is a reality within how we engage with others. But like I said too, when you watch things like that and you have a conscious eye, you just like, you say, okay, this is how I can get better, or what things in my life do I personally do, you know, because all of us are biased in a sense, and we may not even be aware of it. So by able to see that, if you have the right mindset, you'll be able to say, okay, well, let me look at what I can do differently in my life. And I think that's ultimately how the culture changes. It happens on an individual basis. If everyone really took that approach to themselves and their own positions, you know, you slowly have that influence around on people around you, and then the dynamic will eventually change. So it does take time, but it starts with you. So like I said, I can send that to 20 people in my family, and everyone may overlook it, but it could be one person I send it to, and it changes their perspective as well. So I did my job as in addition to me monitoring myself and how I engage with the world around me and my environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And finally, David.
Thank you, Ricky. I think, Ricky, you touched on something that we didn't really dive too deep into, where it's the higher end or the rich or the powerful corporations that are trying to keep all of us down. Regardless, you know, race is a part of it, but you know, not so much race, and that these large corporations and powerful people are profiting off us being divided and at each other's throat. And I mean, because you just look at, you look at the recently any media outlet where they try to hype everything up to get more ratings. And I think, you know, we really need to look for some type of reform, either politically or legislatively, to rein in some of the bad actors that are trying to pit us against each other versus bringing us together to work together and be more harmonious, so we all prosper and share in the wealth. Because, you know, it's always dangerous when the wealth is concentrated in the few. And, you know, if you know, it's a cycle that keeps repeating. And I think we're at a dangerous point in our country where the wealthy have concentrated so much of the wealth in the hands of a few that we're all pitted against each other, and it's dangerous. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I got from every single response from that is the fact that we need to focus on the unity aspect. And as Julian stated, there's the fear factor that creates a divide. As David, as you were speaking about, sometimes the very wealthy who have no intentions of creating equity will do things and put things in place to create even further divide with the people who are fighting to get the resources they need. And Bernie, as you stated, to treat people as people and not necessarily treat them differently because of, maybe their skin color or other factors. I will say a way that we can even elevate that further as far as treating people like people is to celebrate their differences, because being a Black man, I have unique challenges in regards to my health that you may not necessarily have, or there may be some things that you have to deal with that I may not necessarily have. Sabrina, as a woman, has some very unique challenges and things that she has to overcome. So us being a community and to create the unity, we have to be able to acknowledge what those differences are, but not as a way to see them as less than, but to see them as different and be able to navigate that together. So I think as we continue to open up the dialogue, as we continue to see people for who they are and the unique things that make them who they are, that give them value, I think that we will continue to bring people closer together. And Sabrina, I just want you to, if you have any other final thoughts, go ahead.
You're doing a great job. As I listen to all of you, it helped clarify my perspective on the matter of white rage in America and looking at that experiment that Oprah did. It was all about communications, Bernie said, having a voice. Like the people at the end with the blue eyes, they felt excluded. And they thought, hey, why are you giving them donuts and coffee? Why not? They wanted to have a voice. They just wanted to speak and say, hey, we noticed things are a little different. What are you going to do about it? So I'm going to go back, the whole thing with this rage, whether it's Black, white, Chinese, is people feeling like they want to be heard and listened to. Give a voice. If they see things are a little different, let me speak on it. So that's my perspective, is rage is not about race. It's about communication. It's about not having exclusivity, being exclusive, but equality. And isn't that what we all want? So Ricky, thank you so much. Thank all of you. This has been a great topic. We actually had more we want to talk about, but your comments and thoughts were so well needed. This is what we needed to hear. This is what Uncomfortable Conversation is all about. So I want to thank our guest again, Mr. David Hart, CEO of M3 Lincoln, Florida, Mr. Bernie Mock, Moza Digital, and Forever Guard. Thank you, sir. Julian Keys. You've got your, Eno? Is that what it's called? Musician at heart. He's going places. Ricky Bernie, transformational coach and author, destined to greatness. Thank you so much. We enjoyed all of you. We'll be back again next week. Thank you for being a part of us. Oh, thank our producer, Daryl A. Johnson, and our engineer, Alan Chafin, that makes it happen every week. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.